In the land of Egypt, where pharaohs reigned and the Nile whispered the secrets of gods and kings, there arose a man not of noble birth, but chosen by the Most High for a mission that would alter the course of history. His name was Moses, and his story, marked by miracles, rebellion, and divine intimacy, stands as a timeless testimony of faith and legacy that would echo across millennia. It began during the brutal oppression of the Hebrews, when Pharaoh, fearing the growing strength of the Israelite slaves, decreed that every newborn Hebrew male be cast into the Nile, a command of terror meant to extinguish a future deliverer. Yet God had already written the name of Moses in his divine plan, and in the secrecy of his mother's home, the child was hidden for 3 months until she could no longer protect him. So she placed him in a basket made of bulrushes, sealed with pitch, and set him afloat among the reeds of the Nile, trusting God more than her fears. And as providence would have it, Pharaoh's own daughter came to the river to bathe and saw the basket, and upon opening it, was moved with compassion by the crying child, adopting him as her own and naming him Moses, drawn out of water, unknowingly raising in Pharaoh's palace the very one who would one day stand against the empire and demand freedom in the name of the Lord. Raised as a prince among gods of stone and towering obelisks, Moses never forgot the blood that ran through his veins. And when he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, he acted in raw justice, striking the Egyptian down and burying the body in the sand. But when his crime was discovered, Moses fled to the land of Midian, stripped of royalty and status, where he became a humble shepherd under the care of Jethro and married Zipporah, finding in the wilderness not only refuge, but the shaping silence of God. For it was in Midian's solitude that Moses would encounter the burning bush, a fire that blazed without consuming, from which the voice of I Am called out, declaring holy ground and commissioning Moses for a mission far beyond his qualifications or desire. For he was to return to Egypt and stand before Pharaoh, armed not with sword or army, but with the authority of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses, full of reluctance and fear, questioned his worthiness, his speech, and his ability. But God answered each doubt not by elevating Moses, but by promising his presence. I will be with you, he said, and with that divine assurance, Moses obeyed. Thus began a confrontation between the servant of God and the ruler of a global empire, as Moses and his brother Aaron stood in Pharaoh's court and spoke the words that have shaken thrones ever since. Let my people go. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and with each refusal, God unleashed judgment upon Egypt, turning its waters to blood, filling its skies with locusts, and casting darkness over its lands. 10 plagues in all, culminating in the death of every Egyptian firstborn, while the Israelites, under God's command, sacrificed lambs and marked their doors with blood, so that the angel of death would pass over them. It was this night that gave birth to the Passover, a shadow of things to come, and Pharaoh, broken and grieving, finally let Israel go. But even then, he pursued them to the edge of the Red Sea, where the people trembled, trapped between the water and the chariots of wrath, until Moses lifted his staff and God split the sea in two, making a path of deliverance through the deep. The Israelites crossed safely, but when Pharaoh's army followed, the waters returned, drowning the oppressors and sealing God's victory. And there on the other side, Moses and the people sang songs of triumph to the Lord, who saves not by might, but by his Spirit. Yet freedom brought not ease, but testing, as the journey through the wilderness revealed the stubbornness of the human heart. Thirst and hunger stirred grumbling, golden calves revealed idolatry, and disobedience abounded. But through it all, Moses interceded for the people, climbed Mount Sinai, and spoke face to face with God, receiving the law written on tablets of stone, a covenant meant to shape not just a nation, but the soul of a people called to be holy. And even when the people sinned, Moses pleaded, "Blot me out of your book, but spare them," reflecting a Christ-like heart that would foreshadow the greater intercessor to come. And as the tabernacle was built and God's presence descended as a cloud by day and fire by night, Moses led the people not just as a prophet or leader, but as a friend of God, a man transformed by divine encounter, who glowed with glory after speaking with the Almighty, whose face was veiled because it shone too brightly for human eyes. Still, the burden was heavy, and Moses bore the weight of rebellion, complaints, and the consequences of a generation unwilling to enter the promised land. For at Kadesh Barnea, fear overruled faith, and the people refused to enter, so God declared they would wander 40 years in the desert until that generation passed. Even Moses, in a moment of anger and disobedience, struck the rock instead of speaking to it, and though water flowed, the act cost him the right to enter Canaan. Yet God's mercy remained, and Moses continued to lead, teach, and bless the new generation, delivering the book of Deuteronomy, the repetition of the law, and charging Joshua to lead them forward. And on the plains of Moab, at the age of 120, with eyes undimmed and strength unabated, Moses climbed Mount Nebo, gazing upon the land he would never enter, a bittersweet vision of fulfilled promise. And there he died, buried by God himself in an unknown grave. But his legacy could not be buried, for from his life would come the Torah, the foundation of Jewish faith, the standard of righteousness, and the foreshadowing of Jesus Christ, who, like Moses, would deliver his people from bondage, not of Pharaoh, but of sin and death, who would establish a new covenant not on stone, but in hearts. And to this day, the name of Moses is spoken with reverence, his story told in synagogues, churches, and homes, his journey from basket to burning bush, from sea to Sinai, from exile to Exodus, continuing to stir faith in all who hear it, reminding us that God does not call the qualified, but qualifies the called, that he chooses the meek to confound the mighty, and that even in our weakness, his strength is revealed. And as generations look back to the servant of the Lord, who stood between God and man, who lifted his staff and split the sea, who communed with God in cloud and fire, we are reminded that faith is not absence of fear, but obedience despite it. And legacy is not built in palaces, but in deserts, where men walk with God, speak truth to power, and leave behind a story not just remembered, but lived anew in the hearts of all who believe. Thus the story of Moses endures, not as myth or memory, but as a burning testimony that still calls out, trust in the Lord, follow his voice, and you too shall walk through the waters, receive the promise, and leave behind a legacy of faith that never dies.